Hey, welcome back to Beeps and Bloops Podcast, Season 2, Episode 2, and today we've got a couple of fresh faces here. We've got Kaz returning from Season 1. How's it going, Kaz?
Not too bad. How have you been, Aaron?
Oh, you know, living the dream. Technical difficulties abound today. We had some issues getting started here tonight, but we seem to have them conquered. But then we've got the usual suspects as well. Shawn, the Eep. How's it going, Shawn?
Good, and good.
All maybe those goods, there must be
Shawn,
some little fraction of something bad in there.
Shawn, are you good?
Well, I might be, but I'm not sure if there's an E at the end or not. It's my name.
And Pory, how's your week been?
It's been alright. It's kind of uneventful, but I'm doing okay. I'm chilling.
I hear you're going to a convention or something next week. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, on a Saturday there's a convention happening in I forget the town name. I went to it like 2 years ago in 2020. It was like kind of general convention. Like there weren't a lot of games there. Like there were a few game vendors, but they were all overpriced. But it was like a gold mine for toys. So hopefully I score something cool this time.
For sure. And then we've got Bill. Bill's been a longtime viewer and contributor to my channel and to the podcast. And Bill reached out to us because he wanted to talk a little bit about something that's near and dear to his heart. Bill, what brings you on the podcast today?
Well, exactly like you said, I've been watching pretty much since you guys started, or at least shortly after, and went and back watched all the other episodes. But I'm big into emulation. I've been emulating everything I can get my hands on since the PS1. I learned how to solder by soldering mod chips into PS1s way back in the day.
Very cool. So emulation is something that, it's misunderstood and it can be a dirty word. And we're going to dive deeper into emulation with you here with us tonight, Bill. As the topic of the night. But before that, we want to just kind of touch on some of the news topics for the week. Of course, there's been some interesting things happen this week. The Steam Deck, which plays into emulation a little bit as well, and we'll talk about that some more later. But the Steam Deck has officially been released, or at least people have started to get their emails back on the 25th. I've seen some YouTube videos of some people getting their Steam Decks, and it's a pretty exciting time for people that are interested in this kind of device where you can play PC games and theoretically all different kinds of games in a handheld package that's pretty powerful, like a heck of a lot more powerful than the Nintendo Switch that people are often comparing it to. What do you guys think of the Steam Deck?
It certainly seems like an interesting little device, and I'm excited to see the possibilities that it brings to the table with the emulation that we're going to talk about tonight, as well as PC gaming on the go and the things that the Switch has brought to the table, but the Switch doesn't necessarily have the power to do. Yeah.
It's interesting. Valve has not released hardly any information about the operating system, the software on the Steam Deck. So we have only just learned pretty recently. We had thought that the Steam OS was basically going to be a gaming interface, but it seems as though there is a full desktop experience involved as well, a variant of Linux basically, and it looks like we're going to be able to do a lot more emulation with a few tweaks here and there, basically without having to modify. See, everybody was talking from the get-go about putting Windows 10 or Windows 11 on the Steam Deck in order to access a lot of this functionality that we thought we wouldn't have within the Steam OS, but it looks like there's a lot more that we're going to be able to access in terms of emulation and in terms of accessing other storefronts like the Epic Games Launcher and things like that on the Steam Deck. I've got mine pre-ordered. I'm waiting. Looks to me like it's going to be Q2, so I'm hoping April or May at the latest that I finally get mine. But who's really been thinking about emulation more than playing Steam games on this thing?
Well, I have. I can't on it. Apparently, what is it, the RDNA2 chip that they're running on it might actually be decent to run the Spine emulator, which emulates PS4.
Oh,
So I'll be interested to check that one out. And the Spine emulator, as it is, only runs in Linux. Like there's no Windows ports for it yet, so I'll be really interested to see how that runs. Nobody's trying that yet.
I'm interested in a bunch of, different things. I mean, whatever your philosophy is as far as how you acquire these games, or whether you should emulate things that are current or just old stuff or whatever. I mean, we'll get into that later, but yeah, I'm pretty excited for the future of the Steam Deck because it looks like it has the horsepower that it's going to be able to emulate a good amount of stuff, like pretty much right up to, current cutting edge stuff. So pretty excited for that. Elden Ring released this week. I don't know how many of us are From Software fans, but from a couple days before it released, it was getting 10 out of 10 reviews left, right, and center. It's got like a 97 on Metacritic, looking to be one of the highest reviewed games of all time, in a very small group of games that actually achieved a 97 or better. Watching people on Twitter talking about playing this game, it looks like a more approachable game in the FromSoft series. They've introduced something, magic users and different things like that have maybe made the game a little bit more accessible for people. And also, because it's an open world, you can kind of take it at your own pace and take it in your own direction. And so, I don't know, what do you guys, has anybody here actually played Elden Ring yet?
No. I don't think I know anything other than the promotional picture for it, because I haven't really... My brain just turns off when I hear about it, because I hear about it everywhere. So I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's a good game.
Yeah.
Apparently, interestingly as well, over 80% of Elden Ring's sales have been on PS4 and PS5, which is kind of interesting considering PS5s are still pretty limited. You would have thought there would have been maybe a larger amount on Xbox One or something like that.
So, so it's not a PS5 exclusive. It is on PS4 and other consoles then.
It is, yeah.
Okay, that is not the concept that I had, so that's why I haven't gotten it yet. But
and
now that I know, I might get it.
As far as performance is concerned, people are actually saying because of some of the glitches in the game, you're actually best to play the PS4 version on a PS4 Pro, which I know you have, but that's apparently, other than, the graphics being slightly downscaled as far as performance goes, that's actually the best version to play, because the game was originally designed as a PS4 game, and it just kind of extended into the PS5's life cycle. So apparently that's the best way to play it. So let me know if you decide to go for it.
Will do.
I'm never really been interested in From Software games because I'm kind of a pansy when it comes to super difficult games, but this one's looking to be a little more interesting because of the accessibility. Like, it's something I think I may pick up, maybe not right away, but when it comes down to $30 or $40 that I can afford to lose, if I don't like it or whatever. But so what else have we got? Funny story. Friend of mine, Harrison Holzauer, the guy that created the Game Eye collecting app. I was talking to him. I talk to him pretty frequently. He's a great guy.
Nice guy.
And he put something up on Twitter about putting out some Game Eye pins for fans and whatever like that. And he said he was going to send me one, for free, whatever. Well, I got it in the mail yesterday. I got this hand-addressed envelope from Game Eye, and I ripped it up excitedly and pulled out a couple of business cards and an empty bag.
Oh no.
Somewhere, somehow, I don't know how, but the empty bag, that the little dime bag that the pin was supposed to be in, was delivered, but the pin was not. I got a kick out of that, and I sent him a picture of that on Twitter. So we'll see whether he sends me another pin or whether that's just going to be a running joke from now on. But Game Eye is a fantastic app for those of you out there that are looking for a way to organize and track your video game collection. Game Eye is completely free. It's available on Android and iOS, and it's a wonderful interface for scanning your games by barcodes, for searching different games. It's got a huge encyclopedia of things that you can look up. You can create kind of wish lists and all kinds of things like that, and it's really fantastic to have something like that in your pocket. when you're out game hunting that tells you everything you've got and everything you're looking for, so that you don't buy doubles and triples by accident and that sort of thing. So highly recommend Game Eye. It's free. You can't go wrong. I used to use CLZ, and that was a paid subscription type service. It wasn't very expensive, but still, you know, free is free, guys. So check it out for sure. Zach, why don't we head over to you for the new news of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet.
All right. So, yes, or I guess a couple days ago now was February 27th, Pokemon Day. It was their 26th birthday, and I don't know if it's because we just got like 2 new Pokemon games in Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and Pokemon Legends Arceus, but I was not expecting to see any real news in the vein of a brand new generation, let alone like a whole new game and all that. But sure enough, they had their Pokemon Presents, and you know, we saw a bunch of stuff about their mobile games. But at the end of the presentation, after talking about an update for Pokemon Legends Arceus, they revealed Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet, the beginning to the 9th generation of Pokemon games. It looks really good. It's the first fully open world Pokemon game. Even Legends Arceus was kind of like an introduction to the open world, but it still has zones rather than being completely traversable. So it's going to be really interesting, and I'm really excited. It's the first time I've been really enthralled by the set of starter Pokemon that they've shown us. So
yeah, some interesting stuff there for sure. What do you think about the graphics? Like, the graphic style seems pretty nice and really unusual for Pokemon. Like, what do you know about that?
It certainly looks like they're taking the Pokemon Legends Arceus engine and their art style and just prettying it up. It looks very similar. It could just be because it's very similarly open world, but Legends Arceus had a very watercolor-esque, you know, almost like they tried and made it look like they had painted it in old times sort of thing. So I think they took that, saturated it a little bit more, smoothed everything out, and my sort of headcanon conspiracy theory is that they worked alongside Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet at the same time, and then just went that bit further with Scarlet and Violet.
What do you think about the look of the new trainers? I know people have been kind of on the fence about the look of the trainers.
I have to really get a better look at them, but the little bit that I saw, I wasn't too enthralled with the art from them. The faces looked oddly doll-like and not chibi or cute or any, you know, smooth. They'd look weirdly doll-like in a way I wasn't so fond of, but otherwise it didn't look so bad.
And from what little gameplay we saw, how similar do you think this is going to be? Like, do you think we're still going to be going into turn-based battles, or is it going to be more the Arceus style of just sort of, you know, walking into a battle and starting it right away? Or
well, even Legends Arceus is turn-based. It's just a little bit more free-form turn-based. You have your, you know, agile style and strong style that let you sort of change the flow of battle and gives you more strategic options that way. And I think it'll be very similar, that we're going to have some other cool mechanic. That's been like the sort of running bit for the past like 4 or 5 generations, is there's a new gimmick every time. But we're definitely going to be able to see our Pokemon walking around and like run up to them. We could just probably throw a Pokeball to catch them without having to engage in the whole battle cutscene stuff. But I think it's going to be a very traditional Pokemon game in the sense that you still have to go around the region and collect your 8 gym badges, go fight the Elite Four and the champion and beat the game.
And see, if this is fully open world, that presents the problem of, you know, with most open world games, you can kind of go where you want, when you want. So how are they going to lead you from one gym to another? Or is it going to be possible to just start at any gym? And how are they going to scale and balance the difficulty and stuff like that? Like, if it's an open world and you go to the 4th gym first or something, like, how do you think that's going to work?
Well, there's 2 ways to go about it. One way is just scaling levels between the gym leaders and the trainer, so that they have equal leveled Pokemon to you. But the other way, and it's sort of supported in the lore, is that every gym leader would have a specific team that they would use to battle a trainer depending on what number of gym badges that trainer has. There was an animated episode, I think it was Pokemon Origins, where the protagonist, Red, who was like your character in Pokemon Red, went up to Brock, and Brock says, and he's the first gym leader, he says, hey, you haven't fought a gym battle before, so I'm going to use these 2 Pokemon against you. And he pulls out, low-level Geodude and Onix, a couple of rock-type Pokemon, for that battle. And so it's scaled in a more natural progression. I think that's probably what's going to happen. But at the same time, I think the designers are going to guide the player as to what they think would be ideally the best route and course of action. We've seen that happen in games like Skyrim and Breath of the Wild, where the designers sort of catch your eye in interesting ways and make you think that you're going where you want to go, but you're really going where the designers want you to go.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So just wrapping up the news for tonight, apparently the Nintendo Online service has added a new bit of functionality. We now have something called missions and rewards, which I'm kind of interested in checking out. For those of you who have the Nintendo Online subscription, there's now kind of a mini achievement system in place where when you play certain games, or you'll have missions presented to you that you can complete on a daily and weekly basis, whether that be playing certain NES or SNES games or whatever for a certain length of time, you achieve kind of, you end up winning gold and platinum coins, which you can then use for other things. And people have been complaining about the Switch for a long time really not being very personalized, and the idea that you don't have wallpapers or themes, and really all we have are those little icons that we can use for thumbnails for our profiles. Now, Nintendo's announced a whole bunch of new icons that you can win access to by completing these daily missions and things in the Nintendo Online. So that kind of is a fun little thing, a little bit of an achievement system, and finally gives us a little bit more, I think, in the way of personalization on the Switch finally, because there's quite a few new icons that you can access, ones that are specific to Animal Crossing and Mario Odyssey and Smash Bros. A lot of different things that you can kind of engage in there. And then you can also, there's a whole storefront now where you can cash in some of those platinum coins or whatever for real-life physical items that are limited edition items. And of course, they're really little nothing items like postcards or keychains, or I think there's a calendar and a couple of other little things that you can actually have sent to your door by Nintendo. The interesting thing about those, though, are if you look back at some of the Club Nintendo stuff from back in the Wii days and things like that, some of that stuff is actually pretty rare and pretty expensive at this point. So it's worth tracking some of that stuff down. Even something like a little art card or a keychain or something, when it's as limited as it is, could be something interesting to own down in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you guys consider? You're cutting out there, Bill. Sounds like you're talking through a popcorn machine. Let's try and refresh your phone there, and we'll get back to you in a minute.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move on to the main topic of emulation, and I'm hoping we can get Bill in here. We've been having some technical issues, but if not, we'll kind of shift on the fly and just give our opinions, and we'll try and pull Bill in on another episode or something if we can't get the things working here tonight. But emulation keeps coming up. It keeps coming to the forefront as different systems die off. They reach their sunset years, and it's been brought to the forefront last year by the idea of Sony shutting down the PS3 storefront and the PSP and PS Vita storefronts. Now, there was a huge backlash to that, and Sony actually reversed their position on that for the PS Vita and PS3 storefronts, which are still up to this day. But they did shut down the PSP storefront, and now we're seeing recently that Nintendo has announced that they're shutting down the Wii U and 3DS storefronts coming up here pretty soon. Now, they've given us a little bit of a roadmap of different dates where they're going to do different things, and it looks like basically now, in the beginning of March, they're cutting off the ability to use credit cards to make purchases in the 3DS and Wii U storefronts. And by August of this year, you will no longer be able to use eShop gift cards, those little Nintendo gift cards that you buy at GameStop or Shoppers Drug Mart or your local gas station or whatever. You're not going to be able to use those after, I believe it's August 23rd. Certainly sometime in August anyway. Now, that is effectively the end. August is effectively the end. There is a workaround where you can link the 3DS or the Wii U up to your Switch account and purchase things through the Switch account. And it's kind of convoluted. I don't think a lot of people are going to go in that direction and go to that effort. But that functionality is supposed to last until March 2023, where you can still theoretically buy things from the eShop if you go jump through all the hurdles and stuff like that. But we are looking at most likely August as being the realistic time limit for being able to purchase things. And that really brings up a question like, what should we be buying or what should we be doing? And this is the time when people start talking about emulation, because it's like, hey, if Nintendo is not going to sell this stuff to us, then why can we not find some workaround to, acquire it by various means, hack the system, do whatever? Because if Nintendo's going to turn their back on us as gamers, what do we do? And that really always brings up the concept of emulation at that point, modded consoles and things like that, because we're really losing access to potentially thousands of games permanently. Like, there's no other way to play a lot of these, DSiWare games and WiiWare games and things like that. They're just lost unless you download them and emulate them somehow. I don't know. What do you guys think? Pory, have you really dabbled your toes into emulation at all over the years?
No, I have not. I tried it out a little bit when I first started game collecting. I downloaded a few ROMs onto the computer. Like, I downloaded Mother 1 translated. I was like, oh, I can actually play this. And I also tried some rare Atari 2600 games like Texas Chainsaw Massacre that way, but I don't like using a keyboard to control games, and I don't like jumping through hoops to get a controller to work on the computer, and I'm not a tech savvy person at all. So while emulation is a wonderful thing, it's really just not for me at all, unfortunately.
Well, this has been the conversation that I've had with the emulation space for so long too, and I completely agree with you in the past. And I think Kaz has some stories for us too, some horror stories with emulation and stuff as well. But for the longest time, emulation was finicky. It was hard to get working, and you would have so many problems with inputs and outputs and touch screens and so many different devices just not working the way they were intended to. But things have really gotten a lot better in the last couple of years. A lot easier. I made a video a while ago about emulating on an Android phone with a Razer Kishi controller, and that was absolutely seamless. Just putting something like RetroArch or Lemuroid on the phone, dumping some ROMs onto it, and I'm able to seamlessly play PS1, PSP, like so many of the old retro 16-bit and 18-bit consoles, Neo Geo Pocket Color, like just about anything like that I can emulate on that phone now. And with that Xbox-style Razer Kishi controller, just basic default settings, things work basically the way you want them to. Bill, give me a testing 1, 2, 3. Let's see if your audio is working.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we have a good connection. So, Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you into emulation and some of your experiences over the years? Like Pory was mentioning, how emulation is kind of hinky, back in the day, and how it's kind of gotten better, and give us some insight there.
Yeah, and I mean, emulation definitely has come a long way, especially even in like the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, 4 years ago, it was still like pulling teeth trying to get, an N64 emulator working at all. You couldn't get anything better than about half speed. It was painful. Part of it is, leaps and bounds in the programming, and part of it's been leaps and bounds in the hardware since then. But I mean, emulation for me started more than anything else just as a way to play games I couldn't access. Japanese import games. Like in the first game that I either emulated or mod chip to play was Dragon Ball GT Final Bout. Not because it was particularly good. I just really liked Dragon Ball at the time. So, I mean, I went out of that one. I went out of my way to try and hunt down a copy of it. There used to be a place here in Regina called Tokyo 7 that would just, burn off discs for you for the PlayStation. It was, I think they got shut down though because of it. But no, that was my first real step into it. And then as soon as the PSP came out, the PSP was a whole new world of emulation, and so basically solved a lot of the problems that Pory was having. As you didn't have to worry about getting a controller to work properly with it. It just kind of did right out of the gate. And I mean, most of my games I still play on my PSP or my Vita to a lesser extent. But as Kaz was talking about the Pokemon games, I remember that I actually been in the middle of a leaf green game on my PSP.
Nice.
Excuse me. So why don't we touch on, Bill, what systems you have worked on and what systems you prefer, and talk about the difference between hard modding and soft modding. I've been interested in things like that SD adapter in the GameCube, where you basically put an SD into the laser mechanism or something. I'm not sure how it works, but interested in being able to have like the entire GameCube library playable on an actual GameCube. That's pretty cool. Versus soft modding on things like the Wii with the homebrew channel, or the Xbox, original Xbox setup. Give us some insight on what you like and don't like in those sorts of circles.
I mean, when it comes right down to it, playing on original hardware is always the best way to go. I mean, you're not going to deal with input lag if you're emulating, or if you're playing rather on original hardware. So if you're playing PSP games, even if they're data copies of them, if you're playing them directly on a PSP, it's always going to be a better experience. I mean, input lag isn't terrible most times, but it can be really bad, especially playing, some of the older games, when timing jumps is kind of important.
Yeah.
Input lag can't be tolerated and stuff like that. So, I mean, on a lot of the older consoles, PS1, PS2, the PSP, I'd rather play on original hardware. I don't like emulating them. So for stuff like that, you want, in the case of the PS1 and 2, a mod chip is the way to go. And the PSP, a soft mod is absolutely the only way to go. I don't even know if they ever made a hardware mod for it. I don't think they did, because it was, jailbroken almost immediately. I think there was an exploit on the original 1.0 firmware, and then 1.5, and pretty much every major firmware release after that.
See, for me, like Pory said, the same, not being the most technically minded guy, I like something that's pretty plug and play. So, like, when I went out and got my PS1 Mini, the classic PS1 Mini, everybody said it was junk. It was terrible. The emulation was running bad, whatever. I went out and ordered 3 or 4 of those True Blue hack sticks, the weed packs and the meth packs, stupid names, whatever. But such a fantastic experience. You just plug the USB stick in and it just magically hacks the system, adds games to it. It's exactly the same interface where you're scrolling through the games, you play it, it saves states, all that stuff just works exactly as intended, and there's absolutely no fuss, no muss involved. And I really like that setup versus trying to say hack a Wii or something, and you've got all these different things that you've got to install, different channels, this channel and that channel, and this kernel and that kernel, and some stuff is easier than others. Like, what would you say is the easiest way to have the broadest range of games and systems available to you on one device?
The Vita is all right. The PSP, if you know anybody who has a hacked PSP, the PSP is the way to go. Because anybody who has one can make what's called a Pandora's battery. It takes like 2 clicks on their PSP, and they put a flash card or like one of the memory stick Pro Duos into your PSP, drop the battery in, and 3 seconds later, it's now soft modded, and it's a permanent soft mod. And then you just load up all your games onto either an SD card with an adapter or onto a Pro Stick Duo, and play everything you want. The PSP was easily the best one to play on. Made a lot of money doing those kind of mods too.
Yeah, of course, with the PSP, you're limited. Excuse me, you're limited to being able to only really emulate stuff that could run on a PSP. So,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
18-bit stuff for the most part. Like, what systems would you normally be running on a PSP?
Your pretty much hard line cutoff is Super Nintendo and before. There is a half decent emulator for N64, but it didn't benefit from everything we learned in the last 5 years about the N64. Like when the private keys were finally, hacked out of the N64, the PSP had already long since stopped development. The Vita is a much better place to live for that. I find that the Vita can pretty much do everything. I mean, Dreamcast is a little bit interesting on it. It's good ROM, bad ROM on that, but everything else is pretty solid on the Vita. Vita isn't as easy to hack. I mean, it's still quite easy, but it's not as easy as 2 seconds worth of modding and off it goes.
So I think the Steam Deck is going to change this conversation incredibly. Right now, I am looking for ways to emulate, particularly PS2, GameCube, and Dreamcast. And I've been able to do a little bit of that on my Android phone, and I can do a little bit of that on my Windows computer. But the Windows computer I have does not have a graphics card. It's just integrated graphics. So, it's pretty limited too. So I'm definitely very interested, particularly in PS2 and GameCube, Dreamcast to some degree as well. What do you think are the best options for those systems at the moment in a console-like experience with a controller?
In a console-like experience with a controller, you're looking at a half-decent gaming computer and running Linux on it using what the heck is it called? Pop OS, I think, with the Proton backend.
Right.
Is about the best bet you're going to have, just because it passes the graphics drivers on fairly well, particularly for some of those higher end systems. You need a decent graphics card until you can get your hands on something with either the Steam Deck itself or a half decent $1,200 laptop that has that same chip in it.
Huh.
There's not a lot of really great handheld-ish experiences. I mean, I've been using my my PS3 to do a bunch of that stuff, but it's already a backwards compatible system, so I mean, it's got a leg up that it doesn't need to emulate PS2.
Right.
It's one of the original BC systems, so I mean, that's not that big an issue. I did watch a couple of videos right before I joined the stream. People emulating the PS3 now on the Steam Deck, and it looks really good. None of the really intense games, so none of the God of Wars yet, but that'll come in time.
We're going to take a quick 5-minute break here. Bill, I would suggest rebooting your phone again while we're off. We've got a pretty decent connection, but when we come back, we're going to talk to Kaz a little bit, and he's got some stories to share about emulating Pokemon as a kid and that sort of thing. So we'll be right back in just a couple of minutes. And welcome back. So I said we were going to hit up Kaz here. He had some stories he wanted to share about emulation and his perspective on emulation. So if you're done sipping from your Pikachu.
Yes, sipping from my lovely Pikachu mug. Yeah, so my experience with emulation is nowhere near as vast as Bill's seems to be. But I used to love emulating the Pokemon games because I didn't always have access to them, which is why a lot of us tend to emulate, right? So my biggest memory is, I think there was this website, can't remember what it was called, but there's this website that I would go to, and it like had an emulator built into it, and you could just like press play Pokemon Blue or Pokemon Emerald or whatever and just play the game. It would save everything for you and everything, and that was tons of fun. I think probably my most recent emulation experience with Pokemon would have been for a Fire Red Nuzlocke that I did back when I was still doing my weekly streaming and stuff. And that was a lot of fun. I was basically doing that until I got the R4 card and stuff, so I could put it on an actual game cart and stuff. But yeah,
how did you actually emulate that? Like, what was the hardware, and what did you do? Just on the computer, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so I just use my computer. I've probably emulated everything up into the Nintendo DS from the Nintendo handheld consoles, and the emulators that I have used, the one that I use for DS emulation, there's one called No Cache GBA, even though it's a Nintendo DS emulator, and the cache is literally the dollar symbol, and it works. It gets the job done. There's some finagling you have to do with like cheat codes and stuff to get like Pokemon Black to work and stuff, but otherwise it's perfectly usable. You just literally go find it, download it, and legally acquire your ROM, and then you can play away.
Yeah, we really don't want to get into the whole moral debate and the whole legal debate about where you acquire these. I know that rules are different in different countries, and I know that people feel differently about things and have a kind of a sliding scale of morality.
It's a whole gray area for sure.
Like it's, you know,
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really concerned with that. We're just here to talk about the actual technical functionality of what is possible with this hardware, whether you consider this a preservation or whether you consider this, you know, accessing things that you wouldn't have access to in another way. It really doesn't matter.
So, yeah, like it's certainly like emulation is a great tool for accessing a lot of these historical games that you may not have access to, or games that you did buy, you know, the license to by buying the cartridge or whatever, that you may not be able to access at the moment.
And even for things like playing these games on other systems, I mean, you know, for me, I do not like to have 27 different systems all in play all at the same time. You know, I've got my PS5, I've got my Switch, you know, I've got a couple of other odds and ends, and that's really all I want to deal with for the most part. So I've got, you know, I can do some emulation on my Steam Deck when it comes, hopefully in the next couple of months. I've got my Android phone here. All my other consoles are in storage in the basement. I don't want to deal with all this clutter, all these physical games all over the place. I've sold my entire collection for the most part. And when I want to go back to something like that, I don't want to deal with the secondary market and having to spend hundreds of dollars on something like the GameCube that I mentioned to you, Bill. Like, I bought an expensive copy of Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. It cost me like $400. And I never got around to playing it because I have so many games, and I never got around to playing it, and I ended up selling it. I got about the same price for it. Like, I didn't lose money on it or anything, but now I don't have access to this game. And, like, I really don't care to spend $400 on it again, or to dig out my GameCube at the moment. And if I am going to dig out my GameCube, I want it to be there with a whole bunch of games ready to play. Screw all this collector's market nonsense, right? So what do you think, like, how are these mods done? Like that SD whatever mod that's done, the Xeno whatever chip or whatever it is on the GameCube. Tell us a little bit about that.
And see, honestly, the GameCube one is one I kind of ignored. I actually skipped the GameCube in my, you know, in my growing up. It was just not a system for me. I was way too interested in what Sony was doing at the time. I skipped over it and went from N64 straight to the Wii. And you know, the Wii's got some really capable stuff, but unfortunately I don't know too much on the GameCube emulation side, or not the emulation side, but the modding side.
Now, of course, the Wii has the ability to play GameCube games, so some would say that's probably the best way to actually mod a Wii and throw all the GameCube games on a hard drive or something. I really like what I have seen out there with this whole kind of interface of having like the cover art and stuff like that you can just scroll through, pick a game. Like, one of my biggest complaints with emulation is the janky interfaces and having to go through file structures and launch an emulator and then launch a game and all this kind of stuff. Like, I really like it when there's a graphic interface that I can just scroll through. Pory's showing off all of his GameCube goodies.
That's Wadebird.
How is that Wadebird, by the way? I've always wanted one of those.
Oh, the Wavebird's great. And the battery life's insane. Like, I put like some generic batteries in it like 2 years ago, and it's still it still plays. Like, it's not dead.
It's it's top notch. If you got a GameCube, that's what you need. I got 2 of them.
Too bad they're like $100 now.
Yeah. But yeah, to kind of touch on exactly what you're talking about, there are a few pieces of software out there that are fantastic to solve exactly the problem you're having. The one that I use the one that I plan to use on the arcade cabinet that I've got out in the garage when I finally finish the cabinet, because that's taking forever, but the software is all ready to go. I use a piece of software called Launchbox, and actually I paid a little bit extra for Big Box, which does exactly what you're talking about. You know, you first scroll down, select your system, and then it moves over. You can select your game. It's got the box art. It's got like the demo videos that would play. If it's an arcade game, it shows you like the cabinets and the manuals, so you can access all of that stuff through it. But I mean,
yeah, that sounds good.
And then all of because I mean, it's not an emulator; it's just a front end. So it's in there, you put like MAME, for example, for all your arcade cores, and you put in something like, what is it, RetroArch for all, you know, most of the earlier ones, but you can pull in like the Dolphin core for GameCube and Wii and all those ones. And it handles all of that stuff that's annoying for you. And most of like the box art and stuff like that, once you give it the game, you can tell it to go out and get all that stuff. So I mean, you legally acquire your game, but it will go out and grab like the box art and all the manuals and stuff like that, because that stuff's all publicly available.
I feel like that is really what has been lacking, that interface to give you that console-like experience where you just scroll through games, click on one, and start playing.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Launchbox is designed for like keyboard and mouse. But and that's why they have Big Box. It's, you know, an add-on purchase, but it's only like, I think I paid $120 for it, and it's solely designed that you never have to touch a keyboard, you never have to touch a mouse. You pick up your PS4 controller or your whatever controller you prefer to use, and off you go.
You know, to go back to that Android project that I'm working on right now, you know, back in the day when I tried to do this before, it just felt really janky trying to run RetroArch on a phone or something. But like recently now I've got RetroArch set up, and it's fine. But when I discovered, it was actually Bob Wolf, Wolfden, he talks about emulation a lot too, and emulation devices, and we'll get into some of those you know, Chinese Game Boy like emulator devices in a bit as well, and talk about those. But Lemuroid. Have you had any experience with Lemuroid?
No, none that I can speak of.
It's a really neat little emulator system, and I'm not sure what its back end is, if it's pulling from, you know, RetroArch or RetroArch clone or something, but it has that whole front end set up similar to what you would get, say, in the Dolphin emulator, where whatever games are compatible just show up with box art. You just click on it. It's got default settings. It automatically recognized my Razer Kishi, so I didn't have to do any controller settings or button mapping or anything like that. It was just, boom, you know, launch Lemuroid. There's your list of games you've got installed, and play it. And that was really a game changer for me.
I mean, yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, is like it can't be, you can't need a computer science degree to do this stuff. Otherwise, you know, that is way too much research. You're just sitting here trying to play some games.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Shawn, any thoughts?
Yeah, you know, emulators are, you know, there's different qualities too, right? I mean, not all emulation requires ROMs. I mean, the Retron 5 is my favorite little emulator because it emulates the systems, is what emulation is. And so when you take like a NES game, like I have one game, for instance, Journey to Silius, or Silius, however you want to say it. It's a game that just doesn't work anymore on my old NES. For some reason, it just cuts out after, no matter what NES I put it into. I put it in the Retron 3. It just dies after like a minute or two of play. But if I put it in Retron 5, It rips the ROM right out of it, keeps it on the system, so the cart's mostly just there for show, and then you're playing on an emulator with the real cartridge, sort of, right? And it kind of bypasses that. You can sideload patches without having to actually open a cartridge. So I like emulators.
Yeah, that sounds similar to like the Mister or the what's the handheld one? There was a handheld one that just came out. What's it called?
Oh, Analog Pocket.
That's the one. But yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah,
Mister is like the home console one, and the Analog Pocket is is for mobile emulation. They have some real advantages, and none of that lag I was talking about earlier.
I did want to get into FPGA as well, so maybe that's something we can transfer over to. I do not have any FPGA machines. I think Pory's had some problems with the analog machines, but maybe you can jump in on that, Pory, a little bit. Your thoughts on FPGA and how good it is or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, FPGA is really good. It's just Analog is a crappy company. I mean, this is what it comes down to. Like, they're cool consoles. It's just if the console breaks, you're shit out of luck because the company Analog is run by like buffoons who don't know what they're doing. But FPGA stuff is really cool. Like the one I primarily use is this bad boy right here, the Retro AVS. It's got NES and it's got Famicom. Very good device. Highly recommend it. Yeah, I'm definitely into the clone consoles for sure.
Pory, do you just take all of your gaming stuff and like place it around your chair so that you've always got something right there in the episode?
Oh no, I've just been recently playing a lot of GameCube and NES specifically. So
I swear to God, everything that gets mentioned, Pory's got something.
Well, it's like I mentioned Dragon Ball Z,
every episode.
Like, what a random one for him to have right beside him.
So that's FPGA. Let's talk a little bit again about, before it gets too late here, we did want to touch on specifically the 3DS and the Wii U, but let's start with the 3DS. So I am currently looking for a way to modify a 3DS to play downloaded 3DS games. Now, I went out and purchased, and I made a video on this a while ago about getting a multi-cart, and I've done quite a few experiments with the DS multi-cart, and I've been able to load all kinds of ROMs on that and clone the card, and so I have quite a bit of accessibility to DS stuff on the 3DS, but I have not yet figured out a way to play downloaded 3DS games, or however you want to acquire those. So any thoughts on that, Bill?
Yeah. I mean, I played around. I can't find my 3DS, so I had to borrow my son's 2DS, and actually my daughter's 2DS. So I spent the weekend hacking them to pieces. So, I mean, it's less user-friendly than I think it should be. Because, I mean, when you go to download a game for, the 3DS, they come down in a format that is ready for emulation, which is not what you're trying to do. If you're trying to run it on original hardware, you have to pull the game onto the 3DS, boot up their God mode software, tell it to convert the game to something that 3DS can use, and then delete the original game so it doesn't destroy your SD card.
Really?
But they do work quite nicely once they're in there. Like just to test, I put on Fire Emblem Awakening and what's the other one here? Ocarina of Time. So I mean, no, that's not going to work.
A little overexposed, but we get the point.
they do work fairly well. And yeah, unlike trying to emulate it, you don't have to deal with input lag or any of the problems with emulation. These ones, once you get them on there, there's no nothing you have to do to make it work each time or anything like that. Once they're on there, they're just there.
So once it's installed, once you've gone through all the hoops and everything like that, that game shows up as an installed game that you can just click on the thumbnail and play?
Yep, that's right. And it boots up just like it's a cart in your system or one that you picked up from the store.
The 3DS typically has a limit on card sizes of 32 gigs. Were you able to bypass that in any way as well? Or?
I didn't get too deep into it like that, just mostly because I had a 16 gig card, and for the couple of games I wanted on it, that was more than enough. But looking at these, something like an R4 card would be a way better way to go about it. But the problem with it is when you use the R4 card, it's sort of emulating. It's basically emulating the handshake that Nintendo is waiting for these things, which is actually the entire reason that it's this weird conversion process to make them work, because it has to be coded to your 3DS. Like, I couldn't take out the SD card from this one and put it into this one and play Fire Emblem. It just won't work. You have to. It's coded specifically to the device, which is the reason for that weird,
So let's say I wanted my 3DS to have the top 50 or so 3DS games that I would like to play or own permanently installed, hacked, ready to play, whatever. What would be involved in making that happen?
Well, I mean, if you had a big enough SD card initially, because the 32 gig limit, I don't believe is a limit within God mode. So if you got yourself a nice big card to convert all of your games over to the format it wants, and then load them up onto another stick, because they'll still work on your DS or on your 3DS. They just won't work on a different one. So those games are there and yours forever. Depending on what the top 50 are to you, you might actually be able to get away with it with a standard 32 gig stick. Like, for example, Ocarina of Time was 300 megabytes in size, but Fire Emblem was like 1.2 gigs. So, I mean, if you got a whole bunch of Fire Emblems, you're not getting them on there. But if you got a whole bunch of, somewhere in between, you'll be able to get the top 50 on a 32 gig card with no problem.
Yeah. All right, and Wii U. Now, I've seen a lot of people talk about soft modding the Wii U, and apparently because it's so easy to mod the Wii, and you can basically run the same homebrew channel through the kind of sandbox of the Wii on the Wii U, that gives you all the same functionality of GameCube and everything like that on the Wii U. But tell me a little bit about like soft modding the Wii U for playing Wii U games.
I mean, that's my next weekend project, actually, because until the store got sunset, the family wouldn't let me touch the Wii U.
Yeah.
Because there's always the fear that I'm about to break it. Although I've never broken a system yet trying to do this, there's always the fear that, the one Wii U that we have is going to be the one that, I fail on. So that's a process I'm going to be playing with this weekend. I can report back with that. I know that the Wii mods that they're talking about, like the sandbox mods, they are quite good. That's how the Vita was hacked for the first time as well. It was hacked because the Vita had its own little PSP emulator, but you were limited to what really what the Wii could do. You couldn't expand into the Wii U's memory with it. I suspect now that the store is sunset, you'll see a whole bunch of developers going and making much easier methods for hacking. Like, even like the silly way that the 3DS works. It is not difficult to do the 3DS, but it took 45 minutes to an hour to do the first one, and then still at least a half an hour to do the second one, and I already had all the files. The Wii U, from what I've seen, is about the same stupid process. So, I mean, as the store goes down, I suspect these things are going to get a lot faster, because what they rely on to do them now are downloads from the store. So you need the Wii store or the 3DS store has to be active for you to hack a 3DS. So you've got 4 months at this point. And the Wii U, from what I noticed, now I may have been looking at an out-of-date one, but the last soft mod I saw for it also relied on something from the Wii U store.
Well, I might send you my 2DS.
I can handle that.
I think we're just about at the end of the emulation topic, but I'm curious what some of the other guys that have been quiet, if you have any questions for Bill or any comments about things that you might like to see in the future. Anything? Pory, Zach, Shawn, anybody?
I don't know. I guess I just know what games you emulate that you can't get any other way. Maybe that you've done recently.
Well, it's funny because Nerdcrave had mentioned that we should pick up a game. I assume that is going to be for a future topic, but pick up a $10 game. that I picked up. I picked up the what is it? PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, which I'd never played, but I picked it up specifically because it comes with the Vita version. Those codes don't work anymore.
Nope.
They are absolutely useless. And this was a sealed copy when I picked it up. It's not a sealed copy now, but this thing was sealed for $10.
Did you need a code to do it?
Yeah, I needed to put it into the PS3, which I did, and then apparently the code that's on there, once you register like Battle Royale online, like through their online service, it also allows you to plug in your Vita then and download it that way.
I wasn't sure if it was a code. I wasn't sure if it was a code or if you got it actually from a file on the disc itself.
I didn't see anything. But I mean, I ended up dumping the disc on my custom firmware PS3 just so I could plow through it to see if there was like a Vita version that was sitting there that I could then use that way. But I couldn't find it.
Glad you mentioned that, Bill. We are going to be taking on this something we've been discussing, behind the doors here. This week is that we're going to be taking on some little challenges here and there as a group, and I challenged the guys to find a game for $10 or less that would represent something you could do on a fairly modern console, and see if we could find some value in games that were $10 or less, because there's so many hidden gems videos out there for expensive games and things like that, but people are usually pretty interested in getting value out of a cheap game sometimes. So we've all gone about trying to find that, and next week on the podcast we're going to report to you on what games we picked and how we liked them for our money. So stay tuned for that next week. Hopefully all of us will have found a game and we'll be able to report back on it. And we're going to do some other challenges similar to this with digital games on the Switch eShop and things of that nature throughout the season. So stay tuned for that. But moving back, I think it looks like maybe Kaz had something to say.
I want to see emulation become, like, I know you were saying you kind of want to stay away from the morality and the legal side of it, but I'd like to see some less ambiguity come to emulation. I'd like to see more things like the Retron that's really cool to play this old legacy content in a more or a less moral ambiguity way.
Yeah. I look at something like the Poly Mega that's recently out or whatever, and the way that works, where you basically install your physical games to the console, and then you really no longer need the games because it rips the games into a memory. I like that idea, and I like the fact that there's kind of a space there where you can maybe procure games by other means. I do like the idea of these being legitimate purchases. I just wish that the gaming industry would catch up to the rest of us, stop with all of this licensing nonsense and just put these games up. Let us download. I would gladly pay for all of my ROMs. Nobody needs the entire library. We do this because you can go on a torrent site and download the entire library in 5 minutes, but
so you might as well have them.
Like, I would be happy to go through the GameCube library and pay $1.99 or $3.99 or something for Chibi Robo or Fire Emblem or something like that, and own that digital copy that I can play portably, just move it around. Like now that we have NFTs, how hard would it be for them to make an NFT out of a digital game and me have that unique copy?
Yeah, here's your whatever proof that you own it, and
And
now going
I
up.
can move that from device to device. I can take that Chibi Robo that's a $250 game, and I can play that on my Android device. I can play that on my PC. I can play that on my Wii that's been modded or whatever. Like, these companies need to catch up to the reality of emulation.
Well, and I mean, you hear so many of them whining about, like in Nintendo, I assume that this is what they're whining about, is like they didn't shut down the eShop on the 3DS and the Wii U because they weren't making money anymore. They didn't shut down for any of those reasons. The idea is that they shut down because it costs too much to maintain. Well, cool. Let me download it from my sources and give me that digital token to say I'm okay to get it from wherever the hell I want. Heck, I want.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like I have purchased this game from Nintendo. Now it's not up to Nintendo to provide it for me. I can go and find it. But now I'm not, you know, going to be in a lawsuit for the next 20 years.
Yeah, however that works. You know, I just wish that these companies would just give us this stuff in the first place, but because they don't care about their history, because they look at this in dollars and cents, and they say maybe only 20,000 people are going to download Joe and Mac from the NES or whatever, so it's just not worth like the architecture of putting that up online for sale. You know, and then we eventually get something like that on a subscription service, and it's there for a few years, and then it's gone, right?
And that's kind of my whole thing, and that's why I want to see it, you know, more legally acceptable. There's no reason why the 3DS and Wii U's Virtual Console collection couldn't have been uploaded to the Switches, especially now that we have some version of Virtual Console through the Nintendo online services or whatever. Like, I can play Zelda, I can play, you know, Zelda 2 and Mario, so why can't I play Bonk's Adventure, whatever that was on, you know, TurboGrafx and stuff from the Wii?
Yeah, it's quite frustrating. As we move forward, we expect things to get better and better, but in fact, they often get worse in so many ways. And we've moved from a model of being able to purchase a game for maybe $3 or $4 on the Virtual Console to having to pay $3 or $4 a month for the entire life cycle of a console in order to have access to a small selection of these games that we used to have access to all of them. And quite frankly,
and how much more would it really like cost them? I mean, if we can fit the entire GameCube collection on like 100 gig hard drive or something, or 200 gig, I don't know what it actually is, but if we can fit it on like a couple of 100 gigs, is it going to cost them that much to maintain that server on the Switch for the Switch thing? Is it going to really cost? And then they could make so much more money even at $5 per game.
Yeah,
I mean, Nintendo needs to really think about it too. It's like they, instead of fighting like emulation and all this stuff, all they'd have to do is embrace it and actually, like, you know, start hiring people, and you wouldn't have problems like they did with Legend of Zelda, like the one that's part of their streaming service now. It's like with the water all screwed up and stuff like that. But the original Wii version, it was fine, and it's been fine on emulators since like the first emulators. But they've gone out of their way. They have to make their own emulators, which is part of what's taking so long. They're not sampling from the community. It's like, you know, bite your tongue, hire them. Hire them, and then, you know, you can't tell me that Nintendo doesn't have all of these products, or, you know, Konami, if it's a Konami game, or whoever else, is like, dump those carts and put it up on a service. It really isn't that hard to provide, you know, Nintendo emulators, for Nintendo to provide a Nintendo emulator, because they hired the guys who made Dolphin, you know?
They've got this, you know, again, this kind of sandbox sort of thing, though, where they only want their products to be accessible on their products. And, you know, the idea of being able to play a Nintendo game on a PC is something they don't want because they can't control that. And, you know, until that mentality, and we see Xbox kind of branching out, and now Sony's starting to put stuff on PC, and, you know, Xbox has been really good at backwards compatibility and putting stuff on PC as well. But you know, it's gonna be a good long time before we really see these companies, I think, start to embrace this more. You know, now with the news of the NFTs, I'm hopeful, since NFTs have become a thing over the last year, that maybe we're going to start seeing some useful applications for NFTs and not just, you know, BS, Bitcoin scams and stuff like that. You know, this is a way that NFTs actually could be valuable. You look at now, whatever you think of the disaster that is the Intellivision Amico right now, they came up with a fantastic idea a few months back to release physical versions of their digital games as essentially NFTs, where you're getting a license key that is transferable. When you buy this physical game, it just has a card, a little, you know, whatever, with the kind of a near field communicator, like an amiibo that you tap on your console, and that ports the game into your console. And then if you want to sell that physical game, you sell it to the other guy, he taps it on his console, and it removes it from your console. And so that's kind of an interesting way that this kind of thing could move forward in the future. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think Steam did it already. They allowed you to lend your games out.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I think that it's gonna be like things like the Steam Deck and things like, you know, A&E's products that are going to hurt Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo. They're going to hurt them in their pocketbook, and that's when they'll smarten up. That's when these kind of changes will happen. And I'd like to say it's going to be Sony that does it first, because I have a fond fanboyism with Sony, but it's going to be Microsoft. If anybody does it first, it's going to be Microsoft, which it kills me to say, but they're already happy in that world. It makes sense for them to do it first.
Well, we're coming up on the end of the hour. Any final comments, anybody, on this topic or any future things that you want to discuss?
Well, pull me back in if you're having a D&D episode, but
I can get in on that.
This has been a lot of fun. And
it's been nice
meeting you, Bill.
Yeah. Nice to have you back, Kaz. You're always welcome. And Bill, you know, if you have anything specific that you want to talk about, you're in the back end chat with us, so you're more than welcome to you know, talk with us at any point. Thank you for your input and being able to pick your brain. I know it's been a quiet day for Pory and Shawn there, but I appreciate you guys soldiering through, and we'll talk a little bit on the webs there about next week's episode. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you on episode 3 in 2 weeks. Thanks so much. See you later.